Hello and welcome to CSIT 165, Module 7, Functional Programming. In this week's module, we're going to be going over functions, how to call them, how to create them, and what we can do with them in R. So what are functions? Well, functions are a way of making a tagging a list of instructions to increase the readability as well as to increase the reliability of that code. Oftentimes, if we continue to write the same code over and over and over again, we're bound to make a mistake. However, if we encapsulate that set of instructions using a function, if we call on that function and make sure that that function works properly, then we can use that function throughout our script and know that it's going to be working reliably and that if there's any error, it's not going to be coming from something that we have already written. So, in order to go into and learn about functions, for this week, we're going to have to go ahead and we're going to have to read a couple chapters. First of all, we're going to have to read Programming Skills for Data Science, Chapter 6. Then we're going to have to read R for Everyone, Chapters 8. This week, we're also going to have a graded discussion as well as some module exercises. Let's do a little demonstration of functions just so that we can see what we're working with this week. Functions are a label for a set of instructions, and functions are used throughout R. A lot of functions that are used throughout R that are good to memorize or good to understand. These are baseline. These are base functions in R. Are the function sum. That's sum. And as a demonstration of sum, we can make a sequence of numbers called x. And we'll say x is a sequence from 1 to 100. And then we can say by equals 0.2. So here we have x. If we click on x, we can see what the values are. And it's 1 to 100, incrementing by 0.2. Seek itself is a function. When we use seek, or we use any type of function, it's going to have a few components to it. The first set of components when we're calling a function or executing a function are arguments. Here we can see we have an argument. We have three arguments in the function seek. We have 1, 100, and by. To get a sense for what that means in this example, we can use the R documentation to demonstrate what this is. So we can see what R, we can do question mark seek. And what that'll do is it'll bring up the R documentation for sequence generation. And we can see here that the main arguments are from, and that's equal to 1, 2, and that's also equal to 1, and then by, and that's equal to this set of commands here. What this means and why, and the reason why it already has an equal sign when we're looking at the manual for seek is because if we do not, or if we fail to provide this set of instructions to R, it will default to using these values. So you can also see that we didn't use the terms from or to, but we did use the terms by. By using those terms or naming the argument, was able to tell R to use whatever value was provided for the by argument. However, 1 and 100 were not given. However, when seek was written, it was written with from being in the first argument and to being in the second argument. When we fail to name our arguments, they'll be placed in an argument position fashion into the function. So in this case, we used 1, and because that was the first one we do, R is saying that this is from. When we use 100, that's the second one, R is saying that this is 2. And that's how it understands that. So as I said, a few good functions to learn are sum. And so the sum of that is 2,000 or 25,048. Another one is round. And so let's say that we have a big number. I'm not sure if R knows what pi is, but let's see. Yes, it does. It does know what pi is. So let's say that we have a big number and we want to round this large number to a set sum of digits. We can use the function round. And you can see here, when we type in round, it's going to say round x digits equals 0. So for x, we can use pi to see what that looks like. We have that. It'll round it up to the digit is 0. However, we can also modify these digits to 2 so that we can have something like 3.14. That's what we have here. Another good set of functions to learn how to use is the functions toUpper. What toUpper is it's a function that takes a string as an argument. So what happens if we use a 2? Well, it's just going to capitalize 2. So as we can see here, calling on functions uses implicit conversions. So by typing in a number here, it will be automatically converted to a character, just like we've seen in the past modules. So what does toUpper do, however? So let's say that we have toUpper and we have a string and it says my name, Troy, but I forgot to capitalize it. What toUpper will do is it'll capitalize all of the letters in Troy. There's different ways that we can use this. It might seem cumbersome to use it this way. However, we can use this with assignments and other functions in order to capitalize only specific letters in vectors. Another set of commands that's very useful is the term or the functions paste and paste 0. You can see paste here is we can use my name is Troy. And what paste will do is it will concatenate each character or each argument character as one string. When it concatenates each argument, it will add a space as a default between the arguments. So we can see here my name is Troy, even though there's a space between is and Troy, even though I didn't specify that there is that. When we type to see what this is or how this works, we can do !paste, which will tell us exactly what happens. So we can see that with paste, we have a default separation that's equal to a space. We can also change this separation and change it to a $sign. That says my name is $Troy. We can also see that there's another function here, and that function is called paste 0. What paste 0 does is it concatenates the arguments as a string without having any separation. So if we want a separation here, we would need to we're required to add it ourselves. Without that, we do not have a proper sentence, or the one that we intended to have. Another set of functions that we can use is the functions nchar. So let's say we want to see how much that sentence, my name is Troy, or how many characters are in that sentence. We can take this, copy it, or we can assign it as sentence equals paste. And so here we can see that we're able to assign variables the values that are returned from a function. So when we do this, if we can also use the function nchar to see how many characters are inside of that sentence. And we can see that there's 15. Lastly, the next function that's very important to learn and become super familiar with for using R is the function C. Everybody's familiar with this at this point in time because that's used as to concatenate a list of values and into a vector. So here as an example, we see vector equals C, 1, 2, 3. And when we type in vector to see what that gives us, it's going to have us a numeric vector with 1, 2, and 3. So that's really great. Now we know how to use functions. We know what functions are important to use with base R. And we know how to figure out how to use specific functions using the question mark command inside of RStudio. However, we also would like to know how to create functions. And so when creating functions, there are three things to consider. The first thing to consider are the list of arguments. When we're making a function, let's call this example function. Actually, that's a terrible name for a function. We should name the function as a tag name for whatever it's actually doing. So we'll say add strings. We'll make this a new function. So add strings. Add strings is a function. And let's say that we wanted to add two different strings, and so we'll say character 1, character 2. So here when we're creating a function, you can see that I have a list of arguments that I've specified, character 1 and character 2. This list of arguments are known as the formals. What goes inside of, after listing the formals in the parentheses using the function, we include brackets. What goes inside of these brackets is what's known as the body. So using this, let's say that we'll say new string is equal to paste, now that we know how to use paste. Character 1, character 2. When we're doing this, we can return this value in several different ways. We can return it explicitly using the return function. And so let's try this. Let's call this character variable var1, and let's say CSIT, and then character variable 2 will be 165, and we'll try out our function. Add strings, character variable 1, and character variable 2. You can see here that it's done exactly what we asked it to do, and that's just going to be pasting the character strings together, and that's going to be CSIT 165. Although this example is kind of a bad example of using functions to increase the simplicity of your code, it does demonstrate all the things necessary in order to write functions and call them. In that last example, we used the return function in order to return the variable. That's not exactly necessary. However, it does tell a reader or a fellow programmer exactly what that string is intending to do. We can also implicitly return the last value that's stated here. And so you can see that that will provide the same result. As well, we actually don't really even need to name a variable here. We can use what's called an anonymous variable, which is a variable that is used and is returned from some other sort of function. And so when we do it like this, you can see here that that also provides the same result. So I think that this provides a very good summation of the module and a very good brief umbrella background of functions themselves. If you have any other questions related to this module, please feel free to email me or schedule a Zoom meeting. Thank you. Goodbye.